My name is Julia. I'm 26 years old, and this is a story I never thought I'd have to tell, not because it was too painful, though it was, but because I genuinely believed it would never happen to me. I believed in promises. I believed in forever, and for a while I believed I had found both. It all began so gently. You know those moments that feel too quiet to notice at first, but they slowly settle in your soul like a familiar warmth. That's how it started. Soft conversations, subtle laughter, the way his messages made even the most ordinary day feel like something was about to change, and I let it happen. I welcomed it in like rain after a drought. I didn't know then that forever can feel a lot like a storm pretending to be shelter. When he said forever, he didn't whisper it. He said it like a man building a future, with certainty, with conviction. With timing so perfect that my heart never questioned if it should beat faster. It just did. Every time I saw his name light up my screen, every time his words sank into my chest, every time he said things like, "You're the one I've been looking for," I believed him. I had no reason not to. I know now that belief is dangerous when it's not returned with the same weight. There was this one night. I still think about it more often than I should. We had been talking for hours, like always. The kind of conversation where silence isn't awkward. It's just space to breathe between truths. He said, "You feel like home." Just like that. No warning, no build-up. And I didn't respond for a moment because tears filled my eyes before I even knew why. Maybe I was already afraid it wouldn't last. Or maybe, deep down, I knew words like that come too easily when there's no cost in saying them. But I wanted to believe. I wanted to think that maybe, just maybe, this was the kind of love that didn't hurt. I told my friends about him. I let myself smile when I did. I let my guard down in ways I hadn't for years. Not after what happened with Ethan, not after spending so long learning how to trust myself again. But he made it feel safe. He didn't just say the right things. He said them at the right moments. And for someone like me, someone who had been craving connection but fearing disappointment, that felt like oxygen. I remember once I told him I didn't like promises, that I didn't think they meant much unless they were kept, and he looked at me. Well, not looked, but I felt his gaze through the phone. And he said, "Then let me show you that I mean every single one." It didn't feel like a line. It felt like a vow. So when he said forever, I believed him. I pictured him meeting my parents. I imagined our first vacation together. I saved little things he'd send me, screenshots of sweet messages, voice notes, even songs he said reminded him of me. I was collecting a future, one small moment at a time. I didn't know I was building something alone, because slowly, without explanation, the rhythm changed. At first, it was small, a delayed reply, a shorter message. Then the good mornings stopped, the check-ins faded. I found myself staring at the screen, wondering if I'd done something wrong, replaying conversations in my head like a detective searching for missed clues. But nothing stood out, nothing made sense. The warmth was disappearing, but there was no storm, no explosion. Just stillness. One day turned into 3, then a week, then 2, and the silence settled in like frost on everything we'd grown. I messaged once, maybe twice, "Hey, just checking in. Hope you're okay." But even those words started to feel too vulnerable, like I was reaching across a canyon that was growing wider by the second. And still, nothing. That's when it hit me. Forever had sounded like a vow, but maybe it was always just a goodbye in disguise. It didn't happen all at once. There was no grand moment, no single turning point where I looked up and realized everything had shifted. It was quieter than that, slower, like water rising so gradually you don't notice you're drowning until your feet can't find the floor. That's how it felt, letting those whispered promises become the foundation I built my world on. At first, they were just words, gentle things said in passing. I miss you already. I can't wait to wake up next to you someday. No one's ever made me feel like this before. Each one felt like a thread, weaving a net of something sacred, something safe. I didn't question it. I wrapped myself in them like warmth against the cold. I wanted to believe they were real, needed to. I would lie awake at night, phone pressed to my chest after we hung up, eyes wide open in the dark, feeling more alive than I had in years. The silence between the calls never felt empty. It felt full, with anticipation, with meaning, with a love I was sure was blooming into something lasting. He said we were building something, and I believed him. With every sweet word, I saw walls going up around me, not to trap me, but to shelter me, to finally give me something stable, something mine. I started changing little things, saving money for trips he said we'd take, shifting my schedule so I'd be available when he was. I pulled back from people who didn't understand why I was always smiling at my phone or humming songs I never used to like. I didn't care. I felt chosen. And that feeling of being seen, heard, wanted, it was enough to quiet the doubts I should have listened to. He had a way of speaking that made every sentence feel like a secret meant only for me. I don't say this to anyone else. You're different. With you, I see forever. Over and over, these soft declarations wrapped themselves around my heart. I didn't just hear them. I built rooms inside me to hold them. Rooms I thought he'd eventually move into, live in, love me from. I started picturing holidays together, our hands clasped beneath twinkling lights, birthdays and late, night talks, sleepy mornings and inside jokes. I could almost taste it, almost touch it. I let those words become blueprints, drawing future moments that hadn't yet happened, but felt so real, so close. It was never just what he said, it was how he said it, like he meant it with his whole being. Like nothing else in the world mattered but making sure I knew I was the one. And I believed that too, because when someone makes you feel like the center of everything, you don't look for the exit. You start unpacking your bags. You settle in, but what I didn't see, what I refused to see, was how little those promises were rooted in anything real. They floated, beautiful and empty, like petals on water, easy to admire, impossible to hold. And I clung to everyone, built stories around them, built a life around them, until the promises were no longer things he said. They were the very beams holding up my heart. So when the silence came, I didn't know how to breathe without them. At first, I thought it was temporary, a bad week, a distraction, something he'd explain and I'd forgive, because I was always ready to forgive. But time kept moving, and the words didn't return. The promises I'd clung to started to crumble, quiet as dust. I told myself not to panic, that someone who once called me home couldn't just disappear, that someone who said forever must have meant it, didn't they? But forever shouldn't vanish this easily. Forever shouldn't fall apart without warning. And yet that's exactly what happened, one whispered promise at a time. There was something about the way each message arrived, never rushed, never careless, as if every word had been chosen, measured, and placed exactly where it belonged. I remember how my phone would light up, and before I even read the words, my chest would tighten with that familiar ache of hope. It didn't matter how tired I was or how long the day had been, his messages cut through everything. They became the small flickers of light I waited for, and they weren't even extravagant. Most of the time they were simple, thinking of you, hope your day's going okay, wish I could hear your voice right now, but somehow they landed like confessions. Like gifts, I started saving them. Screenshots, little notes, even just the sound of his voice reading my name. I didn't realize it then, but I was sewing something with those threads, stitching them into the corners of my heart where the loneliness used to live. It didn't take much for me to attach meaning to those texts. I'd read them over and over, trying to memorize the feeling they gave me. They were like soft whispers that told me I mattered, that someone out there was waiting for me too. And in a world that often felt cold and loud, that kind of gentleness was everything. It made me feel seen, like I wasn't walking through life invisible anymore. I started anticipating the sound of his notifications. I'd check my phone before I got out of bed, scroll back through our conversations on nights when I couldn't sleep. It became a ritual, comforting and sacred. My friends would ask what I was smiling about, and I'd just shake my head. I didn't want to share him, not yet. It felt too precious, too personal. Like if I said it out loud, I'd wake up and realize it wasn't real. But in my world, it was real. Every emoji, every late night I miss you. Every playful nickname or soft confession. It all tied me closer to something I desperately wanted to believe in. That someone could care about me without conditions. That someone could choose me, see me, and not leave when things got quiet or complicated. He had a way of texting that made even the smallest words feel like they carried weight. You make everything better. I feel safe with you. I remember one night I told him I was scared of being too much. Too emotional, too sensitive, too hopeful. And he said, "You're not too much. You're exactly enough." I stared at that message for an hour, afraid to believe it, but wanting to, needing to. That was the danger of it all. I didn't just enjoy the messages. I depended on them. They became my proof that maybe I wasn't so alone. That maybe, just maybe, I could stop guarding my heart and let it reach for something real. I started picturing us having those conversations in person. Imagining the way his voice would sound in the room, not just through a speaker. How it might feel to look into his eyes while he told me those things instead of reading them off a screen. I let my imagination fill in the spaces he hadn't stepped into yet. And the more I hoped, the more it hurt to realize how fragile that connection was. Because with every message, I stitched my heart a little tighter to the idea of us. And when the replies slowed, when the good mornings stopped and the "I miss you" messages faded into silence, the threads began to pull. They didn't snap right away. They tugged, a slow unraveling, a quiet ache that spread like ink across everything I'd sewn together. I kept going back, scrolling through the old messages, reading them like chapters in a book I didn't want to close. Looking for clues, looking for answers, trying to figure out when it changed and why, but there was no warning, no final message, no explanation, just stillness, and in that stillness, I realized something heartbreaking. Those messages hadn't just made me feel connected to him. They had tethered my entire heart to a hope that he never truly planned to keep alive. And when the thread finally broke, it didn't make a sound. There's something cruel about the way silence enters a room that once held love. It doesn't knock, it doesn't ask permission. It just arrives, quiet and cold, settling into every corner like it belongs there. And the worst part is that I didn't notice it right away. I thought it was space. I thought it was breath. I thought maybe love was resting, but it wasn't. It was disappearing. I used to feel warmth in every message, every call, every late night whisper that made me believe we were writing something real. And I held on to that belief with both hands. I protected it, fed it, prayed over it. I gave it room to grow. Because when someone tells you you're theirs, when they promise forever, you don't prepare for absence. You prepare for everything else, moving forward, staying together, dreaming as one, not silence, not the slow vanishing act of someone who once called you their home. The first time he didn't reply, I made excuses. Maybe he was tired, busy, caught up in something unexpected. Life happens, right? I told myself not to panic, not to be dramatic. But when hours turned to a day, and that day stretched longer than comfort allows, I began to feel it. That quiet, that absence, it settled into my chest like a weight I didn't know how to carry. The kind that doesn't scream, it just sinks. There were moments when I'd reach for my phone, my fingers trembling slightly, unsure whether to send another message or just let the silence keep its grip. I'd write something soft, something gentle, just checking in, hope everything's okay, then stare at the screen for minutes, sometimes hours, waiting for it to light up, waiting for a sign that the connection hadn't truly been broken. That it was just a pause, but it wasn't a pause. It was the beginning of the end, wrapped in stillness. What hurts the most isn't the lack of response. It's what fills that space instead: doubt, confusion. Questions that have no answers. Was I too much? Not enough? Did I miss a signal, a warning, some sign that everything was starting to slip through my fingers? I went over every conversation in my head, replaying moments that once brought joy, now twisted by uncertainty. Every time he said he cared, every time he called me his, all of it felt like a lie dressed up as a promise. But even then, I couldn't let go. I kept hoping, kept waiting, because silence doesn't feel like a decision at first, it feels like a delay. Like maybe he just needs time, maybe he's going through something, maybe this isn't about me. I clung to those maybes like lifelines. I told myself love doesn't just vanish, people don't just vanish. Not after everything they said, not after all we shared, but they do. And when they do, the silence is louder than anything they ever whispered, louder than the laughs you shared, the late night confessions, the I miss you that once felt sacred. It drowns out the good memories, replacing them with a ringing emptiness that you can't shut off, no matter how hard you try. I started noticing the absence in places I didn't expect. Songs I used to love now made my chest ache. The sound of a notification that wasn't from him would still make my heart jump, and the worst was when I'd dream of him, only to wake up alone with a phone that stayed dark. It was like my soul hadn't caught up to the truth yet, like it was still waiting for love to return, long after it had left the room. I never got a goodbye, no explanation. No moment to understand or prepare or ask why. Just distance, just quiet, and that silence echoed louder than all the things he ever said. Because words may fade, but absence fills every part of you. It demands your attention. It forces you to grieve something that isn't officially gone but clearly no longer there. And somehow, even now, there's a part of me that still listens for him. A part that strains its ears against the silence, hoping to hear something, anything, that would make it all make sense, but all I hear is nothing, and that nothing is louder than everything he ever claimed to feel. I kept opening the thread like it was a door that might still lead somewhere. The last few messages sat there untouched, frozen in time, like a memory that wouldn't let go of me. I read them again and again, even though I already knew every word by heart. I wasn't just reading, I was searching for meaning, for answers, for something between the lines that might tell me why he stopped showing up. The last thing he said wasn't even dramatic, just a simple talk soon, 3 words that should have felt casual, comforting even. But now they echo like a lie, because he never did talk soon. He never said anything at all after that, just vanished, no warning, no explanation, nothing. It was the kind of disappearance that doesn't make a sound but still shatters everything it touches. I kept scrolling up, back through the conversation, back through days when the love felt full and real. I read the I miss you messages, the late night jokes, the soft promises I had built my whole heart around. I studied his words like scripture, trying to figure out when they stopped being true. But I couldn't find the moment. That's the part that hurts most. There was no shift I could point to, no signal that told me I should have held back. Everything seemed fine, until it wasn't. Sometimes I would just sit there, staring at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard, wanting to type something but not knowing what. What do you say to someone who left without saying goodbye? What do you write when silence answers louder than any text ever could? I tried drafting messages I never sent. Some were soft, filled with hope. Are you okay? I miss you. Others were sharp with pain. How could you do this to me? But none of them felt right. None of them made the silence go away, so I never sent them. I just kept rereading the words he left behind, as if they might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. I even imagined how he might respond if he came back. What would he say? That he got scared, that it was too much too soon, that I wasn't who he thought I was. But those were just fantasies stitched together from pain and longing. Because deep down I knew the truth. If someone wants to be there, they will be. And if they disappear, they've already chosen to stop trying. Still, that didn't make it easier. I wanted closure like a starving person wants food. Desperately enough to look for it in places it never existed. I looked for it in the way he said my name, in the last voice note he sent, in the final heart emoji at the end of his message. I tried to convince myself that maybe he meant to return, that maybe something outside of me pulled him away. But no matter how many times I searched for clues, I found nothing but silence, and in that silence I had to start facing myself. I had to admit that maybe the closure wasn't going to come from him, that maybe the only way to move forward was to accept that I'd been left without explanation, to stop looking for resolution in words that were no longer being written. That's the hardest part, letting go when all you've got is the memory of what almost was. So I saved that last message, not because it brought comfort, but because it reminded me of the line I would never cross again. The line where I gave everything to someone who gave nothing back. That message, talk soon, is a ghost now. It haunts a version of me I'm still learning to forgive, and still, sometimes, I open the thread. Not as often, not with the same desperation, just once in a while when I feel the ache of something unfinished. I read those words one more time, not because I expect closure, but because they remind me of how deeply I love, even when it ended in silence. Even when I never got to say goodbye, I used to picture what our forever would look like, not just in the dreamy fairy tale kind of way, but in the quiet, lived-in moments, coffee in the mornings, arguments that ended in understanding. Laughter in the grocery store aisle, hands held under tired skies. I imagined the feel of it, the safety of knowing someone had chosen to stay, that no matter how unpredictable life became, there would be this constantus. That vision wasn't just in my head. It was in the way he spoke, the way he looked at me like I was already part of his future. The words he used weren't temporary. They were rooted, heavy with intention. We'll get there someday when it's just us. This is only the beginning. Every time he said something like that, I let myself sink a little deeper into it. I made space in my heart for a future that hadn't happened yet, but felt close enough to reach. I built around it, rearranged dreams to make room for his, adjusted plans, softened fears. I even began to carry his language in my own. I'd say we, without hesitation. I stopped seeing my future as something solitary. I stopped preparing for a life alone, because when someone promises forever, you don't build exit doors. You don't brace for endings. You build foundations. But forever, it turns out, is a fragile word. It didn't crumble with a crash. It dissolved slowly like fog in the morning. There and then gone, he stopped showing up in the little ways, less messages, shorter calls, more excuses. I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself not to overthink. That life gets busy. That love doesn't always have to be loud to be real. But deep down, I felt it. The shift, the weight of something pulling away. I remember the moment I knew. It wasn't even dramatic. Just a day like any other. I had sent a message, nothing heavy, just a small piece of my day, something to share, and the reply never came. Not that day, not the next, not ever. I waited, of course. Held my breath every time my phone buzzed. Slept with the screen close to my face, hoping it would light up with his name, but it didn't. He had gone quiet, and in his silence, everything else grew loud. The space where his presence used to be became unbearable. The absence wasn't just a missing person. It was a missing life, the one we said we'd build, the one I had already started living inside my mind. It's strange how someone can occupy so much of your world without ever being physically near. He had never moved in, never officially crossed the lines of my everyday routine, but still everything reminded me of him. Mornings were colder, evenings felt hollow. I'd catch myself laughing at something, and then immediately remembering he wasn't there to hear it. That the person I once told everything to had vanished without a goodbye. I tried to stay strong, to pretend I wasn't unraveling, but the truth is, I was grieving something invisible, mourning a promise that never made it past the dreaming phase. And grief, when it's tied to something that never fully became real, feels like screaming into an empty room. There's no echo, no one to hear it, just silence, and all around me, where his love used to live, was space. Heavy, aching space. I'd walk through the rooms in my heart we decorated together and find them stripped bare. Empty shelves, faded walls, memories like dust still settling. Sometimes I'd sit with it. Let the ache wash over me without trying to fix it. I stopped pretending I didn't miss him. I did, not just him, but the version of him that loved me out loud. The one who made me feel safe in the idea of forever. That version vanished too, and I was left with silence and questions. I still don't know why he left. I don't know if I did something wrong, or if he simply changed his mind. Maybe I'll never know, but I've stopped waiting for answers. Sometimes closure doesn't come with clarity. Sometimes it just comes with acceptance. And all that remained was an empty space where forever used to live. I didn't think I'd ever have to say goodbye. Not to something that felt like forever, not to someone I trusted with the softest parts of me. But here I am, holding the silence where your voice used to be. There's no anger in my heart anymore. Just stillness, just the quiet kind of hurt that doesn't scream, it just sits there. You disappeared without a reason, without a final word, and I broke in places no one could see. I begged the silence to speak. I begged the memories to make sense, and for a long time I thought maybe love was supposed to be painful. Maybe I just wasn't patient enough, strong enough, but I was. I was strong when I waited. I was strong when I stayed. I was strong when I kept loving you in the dark, long after you stopped reaching back. You'll never know how much it hurt to watch the messages stop, to hear the quiet grow louder than every promise you made. You'll never understand how long I carried the weight of your absence, hoping it would turn into presence again. But you didn't come back, and maybe that was the closure I never wanted but needed. So this is not a goodbye to you. This is a goodbye to the version of me who waited, who searched for reasons, who clung to hope that didn't hold her back. I'm letting go now, not because I stopped loving you, but because I finally started loving myself more. Where you left an empty space, I'm planting something new, something mine, something true. Goodbye not to what we had, but to what I thought it would become, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough.